Welcome to my backyard. We're here for session 1, Chaos to Peace, in my backyard because a lot of what we're going to be talking about today has to do with gardening. And this is a perfect place, I think, for us to be. I know there's going to be some background noise, and I hope that you can kind of listen past that to hear the message that God has for you today. When I say schedules, how many of you have a peaceful feeling about yours? I bet not many of you do. Well, think about your schedule for a minute while I give you some that I have come across in my 19 years or so of training for this ministry. Think about this woman's schedule. College student, senior year, taking upper division classes. She's taking 39 upper division units in 1 year. She's working a full-time job during the school year, as well as 2 full-time jobs in the summer before. She's a bit run down. Think of a high school English teacher in her first year of teaching, who, because she's new, is given 5 different classes to teach, is also asked to be a coach of the cheerleading squad, and because she's new, she's afraid to say no because she's not tenured, so she says yes. But then she's also asked to be the chair of the Academic Student Recognition Committee. She's asked to also be the chair of the English department, along with one other person. She's also asked to be on the technology committee because she's new, she knows a lot more about computers than the other people on the staff. She's also asked to chair the accreditation committee that is coming through. See, if high schools aren't accredited, then they can't open. So she's got to be on this committee to help them with her new, fresh ideas. And she doesn't say no to anything because she knows that if she does, she might not be brought back on next year. I also met another English teacher who was working full-time, teaching 5 different classes, running a program for at-risk kids, and had just given birth to a new baby and was going through the most stressful period of her marriage, where her husband just didn't really feel like being a father, and he wasn't quite sure how to be a husband. And I've also come across a woman who had a 4.5-year-old daughter and a 6-month-old son, who had spent the first 6 months of his life kind of being a single parent because her husband had been was being trained to do the new job he'd just been promoted to, and finding out that that promotion would take them from their home in California across country to their new home in South Carolina. She left the career that she loved, she left the family that she knew, she had no support, no friends, and no idea what she was doing in South Carolina. And to make it all a little more complicated, she was going to be a stay-at-home mom for the first time, but felt that it must be easier to be a stay-at-home mom than be a full-time working mom like she was before. I know we all kind of think that sometimes, from going home to going to work and vice versa, but we find out the reality is just the same. It's just as busy. Now, all of those schedules were a part of my life at one point. I was that high school senior, or that college senior. I was that high school English teacher both times. And I was that woman who left everything she knew and moved across country with a new baby and had no idea what I was doing. See, my life was like this. It was a bit overgrown. It was half dead. And to make matters worse, the doctors kind of confirmed that. You see, one doctor I went to put me on a heart monitor because my heart palpitations were so bad that they were afraid I was going to have a heart attack. Another doctor that I went to go see tested my hormones and determined that I was in perimenopause at the age of 33 because I had stressed out so much about my life that I had elevated my hormones. Then my therapist, who I was seeing because they just didn't know what was going on with my daughter, told me that my anger issues and my stressed out basket case of a self was causing a lot of the problems. My marriage almost ended in divorce. They just didn't know what I was doing. You may be in one of those places right now. And I share all this with you not to let you know, hey, I'm there too, but to let you know that there is hope. That there is hope. See, God can take us from this overgrown, half-dead planter, and He can work in us a beautiful, beautiful garden if we just let Him. I gave my life to Christ just before I moved to South Carolina. But the whole time, at the beginning stages of that, I was fully aware that God was out there, but I was just going to be doing my own thing, and He was going to kind of help out. Until I was sitting in church one day, and I heard His voice audibly speak to me, "Be still and know that I am God." I turned and thought maybe I heard somebody, but it was Him, and I knew it. And I told him, God, how can I be still? Really? How can I be still? I've got 2 children. I'm trying to take care of a home. I'm volunteering at school. I'm doing all these things. How on earth can I be still? Well, God is so good. He just cleared things off for me. And next thing I knew, I had a couple of mornings a week available to just sit and be with him. And what I learned has changed my life. And I pray that it will change your life too. Because nobody wants to be like this. But what God showed me is that we all have the same amount of time in a given day. You can think of it as a planter. And as I like to garden, I think that's an appropriate metaphor for us to be using for this lesson today. See, if we understand that our life and that our time each day is kind of defined by a container, we can see that it's got a specific shape. There's a specific purpose for it. It's not for us to fulfill that purpose, but it's for us to ask God to fulfill that purpose through us. But he tells us that there are some steps to go about creating a wonderful garden that he has for us. And the first is to build our gardens on the rock of Jesus. See, when we decide to build our house on his rock and not on our own sand, he assures us that we will have the stability we long for, that we'll have that peace that we want. And in container gardening, we can see that it follows through with that metaphor. When we put rocks at the bottom of our container, it promotes good root growth, it promotes good drainage of the soil that we have, and that produces healthy plants. Those healthy plants are the evidences of God working in our life. So it starts with having that rock of Jesus in our life. And then God just doesn't say, okay, put your house on Jesus and then everything's going to be fine. He says, we have some building to do. First, you need to be taken care of. I need to get you straight. I need to get you nourished. And he gives us good soil to nourish ourselves with. And this soil is important because it's based and built and put together by God's promises, his word that he gives us that assures us that we will have what we need to be peace-filled. The first promise that God told me about was the fact that he will give us supernatural peace when we trust in him above all else. And he gives us that through his word in Philippians 4:7 that says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, through prayer and petition, present your requests to God, and the peace that transcends all understanding will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. He doesn't stop there. He says, not only will I give you supernatural peace, but I'm going to give you clarity of focus. I'll help you know what to focus on. You just trust in me. And he says that to us with Proverbs 19:21. Many are the plans of a man's heart, but it's the Lord's will that prevails. When we allow him to direct our steps, when we allow him to help us fill our days, he gives us that peace and that clarity of focus of knowing what we should be doing. But again, he doesn't stop there. He says, I got more for you. If you'll just trust me, I have more. And the next promise is this. He will give us his order for all things. So often we have our days filled with chaos and we have no idea how to order them properly. When we trust God, he says that he will order our days, our seasons, and our lifetimes for us. And he says this with Proverbs 3:5-6. He says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. See, he'll show us what to do, when to do it, and how to do it if we just let him lead us. But he doesn't stop there either. He's got one more promise for us. And that promise is the ability to find balance in our schedules. It can be done. And he tells us this with 1 Corinthians 6:12. It says, everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible, but I will be mastered by nothing. When I was living my life, and it looked like this, I was mastered by fear. Fear that I wouldn't be good enough, fear that I wouldn't be able to make it, fear that I would make a mistake. Fear riddled me, and this was the result. But when I trust in God, when I allow him to direct my steps, when I ask Him to take care of all I've got on my plate, when I ask Him to tell me what should I do and when should I do it, He promises me that He will guide me and that I will have that peace. This is our foundation. This is where we are when we stop trying to be in control and we give our lives to God instead. This would be nice if we could just stop here. But we do have other people in our lives, don't we? But see, God says, I got it figured out. You don't have to worry about this. He says, first, make sure you plant me in your life first. And I believe God uses seeds in our lives because they require our attention. They require our care. And we take the time to pay attention to God, to develop our relationship with Him. We become closer to Him as a result. If I just stuck a plant in here, it'd be done. I could put it on the back porch, but where would be the development of relationship in that? Once we get God at the center of our lives, and we realize that having God in the center helps us to be nourished, to be filled by the Holy Spirit so that we can go out and do all He asks us to do, then we know we can be the wife He calls us to be. And that's our second priority, is to be that wife that God calls us to be. To take care, to grow our marriages, to take care, to be there for our husbands. It's so important, ladies, to develop this relationship. And if you have yet to be married, it's okay. God still says that during this time, we should be walking with Him until He provides a husband for us. If you've been divorced, that's okay too. God says, keep working with me. I'll take care of it. Trust me. Once we have the seed planted and we're nourishing it and taking care of it for our husbands, the next seed is that for our children and our families. So often, that priority gets out of whack. We sometimes put our children above our husbands and sometimes even above God. We make our children the center of our universe, and they know it, and they cause all kinds of problems. But you know what? They're not the centers of our universe. They are not our main priority. God is our main priority. Then comes our husbands and our marriages. Then our children. When we put our children in their proper place, things do balance out. After we spend time developing our children and our family relationships, then it's time to really work on creating a peace-filled home. Sometimes our homes can be dumping grounds. Sometimes they can be places of anger and hurt. But they should be places of safety and peace for everybody who comes into them, whether it's you, your family, or visitors. But developing that peace within your home takes time. It takes effort. And God says, if you put your things in order, I'll make sure you have the time to take care of it. From laundry and cleaning to decorating to whatever it is that makes you feel peace-filled in your home. Once we have that seed in there, then it's time to move on to being ministers out in the mission field. Whether it's working outside of the home, volunteering, both, whatever it may be, that is another special place where God asks us to spread His message of peace. That takes time to develop that relationship, but it's all built on having God first. When we have God first in our lives, He fills us, He guides us, and helps us to know, okay, this is how you're getting filled. Then we're going to talk about how to help your marriage if you're struggling in your marriage, how to be the wife that God's calling you to be. And it's to work on your children and our families and our homes and so on until we have a good, centered life built on God. But then God just says, He doesn't say, hey, okay, now we're done. Off we go. He's given us the seeds to take care of. And there are some things we need to do to take care of those seeds. First, we need to give our seeds water. And that water is very important. Jesus is our water personally. And if you think about it, think about this. John 4:14 says, whoever drinks the water I give him will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give him will become like a spring of water welling up to eternal life. And that water is important to grow all of our plants. We need to have it. Then we need to give it light. And I think sunlight is the best light ever. But Isaiah 42:6 says this, I will lead the blind by the way they have not known. Doing along unfamiliar paths, I will guide them. Excuse me. I will turn the darkness into light before them. We could all use that as we begin this process, couldn't we? Then he also says we need to add a little fertilizer to our plant to help our seeds grow. And the fertilizer for our lives is John 6:57. And that says, just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so the one who feeds on me will live because of me. I would like to live because I've got Jesus in my life. I know I can't do it in my own strength. This fertilizer will help us to do it. Then God says this, we need to be pruned. And if I take my old plant and I cut away the dead, think about this. Jesus was pruned, and he asks all of us to be pruned. And he says this in John 15, 1 through 2. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit. Well, every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. Ladies, this is the process we're going to be going through in this class. This has been my life. I have gone from this to this. You can too. You can be a beautiful garden, and God has that in store for you if you'll just let him lead you. I pray that this message has spoken to you today, and I pray that you will be blessed in your discussions in the rest of this class.